Hey everybody, welcome to a second video here talking about action cards. This will talk about rebel leaders instead of Imperials, rebel starting action cards, and also um, a ranking for recruitable leader action cards. Let's start with starting action cards and the order in which I like them, and maybe some things you may not be thinking about. So, first off, number one, Temporary Alliance. This is my favorite card to see as a Rebel player and my least favorite card to see as an Imperial player. Um, with Mothma, place this leader in any neutral system and then place units on the build queue. If you draw that, do not wait to play it. Turn one, play it in Utapau. Add a Moncal and a Nebulon. The Nebulon gives you the ability to go after the Death Star, or at least threaten to do so. Um, and also, just Moncals are great. Doesn't matter if the Imperial player is starting on Dagobah or not. Yes, Mothma may be captured. If you're playing rote deployment and you play Temporary Alliance in Utapau, then most likely Tag moves over and Vader captures, or Vader moves over and Tag captures on turn one. Doesn't matter, worth it. You have to get the Moncals out with Temporary Alliance. A second, my second place action card is actually Leia's. I like Our Most Desperate Hour. Search your mission deck and take one card of your choice and assign it to the leader. This can often be used on turn one as well if you do not have Temporary Alliance, especially if you're not starting with units deployed on Utapau. You can just take the um, you can just take trade negotiations from Mothma's pile and out of the mission deck. Let's see if we can find it here. I actually didn't put it out there. Um, you can take established trade relations, put Mothma on it as well, and then you have basically an unblockable first turn Utapau loyalty gain where you gain the Moncal and the Nebulon from the loyalty, and then assuming you're playing base deployment, you'll get a second one on the queue for that as well. So really like that card. If you don't use it early, you can then later use it to score an objective by getting a attack card like Incite Rebellion, or you can even take behind enemy lines or plant false leads with it and just put another leader on it as well to activate it. So that's another thing you can use Desperate Hour for. Really good card. If you don't use it to get Moncals though, use it to score objectives. All right, R2D2 and False Order I put in the next tier down. False Orders, lots of things you can use this for. Um, I have gotten stuck before where I have planned to laser the rebel base, so I'll put Ozzel on, the pull a project card, put it on super laser, and forget to put a second leader on there, and then I'll get false ordered, and then I can't laser the base anymore. And then I've lost a game like that for that particular reason. But generally, what you'll see is you just play this on whatever mission the Imperial player is playing turn one. If Tarkin's on a mission, play it. If the Emperor's on a mission, play it. If Vader and the Emperor are on missions, usually play it on Vader. If it can protect you from losing, an Utapau alliance gain due to Imperial propaganda. So let's say the Empire starting in Celeste, you open and they put Vader on a mission. It could be propaganda, which could, take one or two loyalty away. Just play false orders on it, have it get you a Moncal. R2 generally goes on Leia. That's kind of the default, and then you keep Leia back to block. R2 and Leia are a brutal combo for any Imperial to try to get any mission done. So I like R2 as well. After R2 is C3PO. Generally, C3PO goes on Mothma, and then that succeeds a diplomacy mission. I won't talk too much about that. Good for making sure your build alliance doesn't get blocked. Also, you can trigger things like Incite Rebellion or, Public Uprising to score Return of the Jedi. If you need to do something like that, that's a pretty crippling way to do it. So let's say the Emperor is on a location with one Stormtrooper. You play Incite Rebellion with Mothma. Normally the Emperor might block that, but if they block it, you trigger it with C-3PO, and then you score a 2-point objective with Return of the Jedi. Rebel Planning's nice. Usually I play that on turn 4 or 5 once I have my level 2s out to grab a free level 2. Um, that's just a good timing for that. Rebel Extremist, I don't like Saw because the rebels win by scoring objectives, and if you take Saw, yes, you get a 3 strength leader out right away, but the downside to him is you lose an objective point. And so unless you think Saw is going to score you 2 objectives, you're not coming out ahead with him usually. And then last but not least, or maybe definitely least, Riken, start the evacuation card. Place this leader in any system that does not contain Imperial units, and then vacate the base. This is like a bad version of Hidden Fleet. Hidden Fleet, you can do it at the end of the turn. This you have to do at the beginning of the turn. So really what this is used for is to score raid outposts. Okay, let me tell you what I mean here. So you infiltrate to raid outposts at the end of your turn. The Imperials have to grab raid outposts, and maybe they put them on 2 planets. And if you get raid outposts early, oftentimes the Empire will not have um, any remotes covered, especially if you're not playing rote deployment, right? Because they don't start with Dagobah or Tatooine or anything like that. So then at the start of your turn, you play start the evacuation to send a Y-wing and a trooper to gain 1 here. And then the very first card you play is Hidden Fleet to put a second transport and trooper here, and you've just got 2 points for free. Many of my losses come from that exact maneuver with raid outposts because it's very difficult for an Imperial player to have the extra movement available by I don't know, turn 4 to allocate people to cover not just 1 but 2 remote planets. So something to think about, making the best of a worse situation with raid outposts there, and start the evacuation. All right, you can use it for grabbing the Death Star plans too, to a lesser extent, although those aren't often left totally unguarded. Okay, sorry about the beeping in the background. Let's talk about Luke and Wedge. So these are recruitable leaders. They have a joint recruiting card and 2 individual recruiting cards. So Luke's biggest strength is that he upgrades to Luke Skywalker Jedi and also comes with a Yoda ring, which allows him to re-roll a dice. So this is a great way to blow up the Death Star. It's a great way to get missions done. It's a great way to have a 3 strength, 3, he's the strongest battle leader in the game with 3 space and 3 ground. No other leader has that, not on the Rebel side or the Imperial side. Um, so real nice to have. You have to be careful with Luke because he can get captured and then lured to the dark side, and then the Empire will push you back a reputation point. Let's talk about 1 in a million for a minute. This gets used a lot of different ways and it's not always super apparent. So the main way to use 1 in a million is to score Death Star plans, right? So you attack the Death Star with a couple of fighters and a Nebulon. You play the Nebulon card to remove damage from your fighters. So that, let's say you attack with 3 X-Wings. If I'm the Empire, I need to do 9 damage to 3 X-Wings in order to make sure none of them survive. So maybe you attack with a Nebulon and 3 X-Wings and Wedge or Luke. One of the X-Wings survives. Then you play Death Star plans and you can play 1 in a million to score it automatically. Okay. Now, one thing that's overlooked with Luke sometimes, you can roll your standard 3 dice and then re-roll your Yoda dice if you don't roll a crit, right? So you roll to score Death Star planes, you miss. Now you do your Yoda re-roll, and now you use 1 in a million to trigger your Yoda re-roll to be a crit, and then the Death Star blows up there too. And so that way, if you roll a 50-50 chance and you do roll a crit, and the Death Star blows up without using 1 in a million, then you can save 1 in a million for doing other things, like maybe you're going to score extra hits on a plant explosives, or maybe you need to make sure you don't get captured. So after the Imperial rolls their capture dice, if they roll a 4, you can use 1 in a million to set your fist to double heals or double lightsaber blocks and then not get captured. Um, the other way you can use 1 in a million is if you're defending. Let's say you're need to roll a certain, maybe you need to roll one red heal to heal a Mon Cal, and you need your black to be a crit to kill that last point of damage on the Star Destroyer. You can use 1 in a million for that. Generally, you should be making a major play with 1 in a million, obviously, because great card. Anyway, lots of interesting ways to use it, and if you watch my replays, you can see some examples of that. All right, the lesser cards of the two. Target the Star Destroyers. I often will still take Wedge late in the game if 1 in a million hasn't come up. If you have a combat objective that involves killing a Star Destroyer or killing 3 health worth of space units, this can be nice. It's just a nice way to whittle down the Imperial fleet. Wedge obviously is a strong Navy hero, so using this is great. Son of Skywalker, Luke's lesser card. The nice part about this is when you succeed a mission, generally you will grab Seek Yoda, and then generally you will upgrade Luke to a Jedi. One thing to be cognizant of as an Imperial player, if I see Son of Skywalker played, almost definitely the next move, I'm going to move something to Dagobah and then plan for a capture, just because it's worth it to either get rid, if you can pull off a capture to take Luke out, not only are you risking luring him to the dark side, but you can also get rid of that Yoda ring if you can pull it off with maybe Krennic's Finest Invader or Boba Fett Invader. All right, enough about these guys. That's my strongest hero pair overall. Next strongest hero pair, I think I would go with Lando and Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'll bet I'll catch some flack for that, but I just can't. I just hate Lando. Lando's a 2/2, has a little bit of everything, and his mission contingency plan is very good for getting the last loyalty or the last sabotage out in play. So I don't usually use it for rapid, don't usually use it for infiltrate, but you can use it for infiltrate to get through the level 1 objectives if you want to get that done quickly. But typically you'll use it to build a loyalty, oftentimes scoring a loyalty objective when the Empire just doesn't have enough to block it. Obi-Wan Kenobi, 3 ground strength, which I think is more than he should have. He's also 3 intel. He and Jin, outside of Jedi Luke, are the only Rebel characters with 3 intel icons, which basically means in addition to For the Greater Good, which is his rescue card, he can also play Covert Operations in the base deck or Critical Rescue in the rote deck. Covert Operations is one of the best cards in the game. It's like an infiltrate, but you pick up one of the objectives. So instead of cycling one to the bottom, you add one to your hand. If you get this, Obi is a great person to do it. Also, his card, Noble Sacrifice, oftentimes Imperials won't bother capturing Obi because they don't want to risk sacrificing him to give you a reputation. Lastly, For the Greater Good is great because it lets you take an objective card when you rescue somebody. So the dream is there's a captured Leia, Obi-Wan goes in, rescues her, you draw an objective which you can then later score. Vader plays It's Your Destiny, or they capture Obi as a response. Then you sacrifice him, get a second objective point. one from here that you're going to score later, one that you get here for Obi being removed. If you're playing the Rote deck, it's good because you can just recruit another hero in his stead if you draw a recruit card. But let's talk about Undercover, which is the lesser of Lando's missions here. Undercover is generally better for Obi-Wan. You play often the times the way this is most devastating. You do an attack with your Rebel fleet. So Rebel fleet attacks something with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Then the Empire tries to rule by fear in a different location. Then you play Undercover to move Obi-Wan to block that mission. Doesn't matter if it's a rule by fear or a capture or whatever. You just move Obi-Wan over there, which frees up the Rebel fleet, and then somebody else in the leader pool can now attack again with that Rebel fleet. So you can do that trick with either Obi-Wan or Lando, but it's pretty cool. Lando's best card, Independent Operation, is just brutal for the Empire to try to play around. Standard practice would be you have a Rebel loyal Bespin, you have Imperial, Imperial fleet in Celeste, and the Rebel bases in Endor, right? So Imperials going over to Bespin, even if they try to rule by fear to subjugate it, the very next moment at the start of the next turn, you play Independent Operation, and now all of the army that the Empire had has to move out of Bespin and go back to, Celeste or Malastare or somewhere else. So what that forces the Empire to do is split their fleet in two, and they always have to have a trailing fleet because of Independent Operation. Then this guy can bring these guys back, right? But it delays the Empire a turn, and oftentimes a turn is all you need to win the game. So Independent Operation, one of the best cards in the game, in my opinion. For that reason, if you have Lando and Independent, make sure you're running missions with him where he's not going to get captured, right? Contingency plan, he'll go last. If you need something for him to do, run a rapid mobilization and put him in the base. Don't leave him out to be captured or bountied, because if he's caught, he can't do independent operation. All right, next layer of Rebel heroes, Ackbar and Madine. Ackbar's a 3-1, Madine's a 1-3, so lots of strong Rebel fighters here. Best card out of this group, it's a trap. Right? Rebels need to generally keep their fleet alive. This is a great way to do it. Oftentimes you want to save this if the Empire has interdictors and and you need to attack an interdictor to kill it, let's say, and you don't want the interdictor to cancel your combat card. So you would attack with Ackbar and play it's a trap. Or in general, just anytime you attack a Imperial fleet in a decisive battle, play it's a trap. Madine's card is very good as well. Place this leader in any system and destroy 3 health worth of Imperial ground units. Well, guess what, guys? That counts shield bunker. Okay, so if you're going after the Death Star, Madine, the first shield bunker, open up with a sabotage to get rid of the second. Or if there's only one shield bunker, use Madine to kill the shield bunker, then open up with Dodonna and plan the assault. And now the Death Star is vulnerable. So that's typically what it's used for. You can also kind of use it like a baby version of independent operation, where you thin out the army that's about to attack the base or wipe it completely so they can't trigger it if they have, maybe just an ATST and a stormtrooper there. Point blank assault, a little bit trickier to use, but can be done. Typically, you would do this if you were attacking a base full of attacking a group of ATSTs or ATATs, and you need to thin them down, and maybe you're attacking with just rebel troopers or vanguards. You don't generally want to play this if you have a bunch of speeders there, because then your speeders will get whittled down. Also, if you're attacking capital ships with starfighters, Y-wings, X-wings, maybe a U-wing, and you're attacking 3 assault carriers, well, rather than having to do 6 damage, you can just do 3. So you could drop You could drop bombing run and then maybe roll 3 hits with Y wings, and you can take out a massive number of ACs. So if you could imagine 3 Y wings here, maybe against four, a Star Destroyer and two aircraft carriers or assault carriers, and you want to play point blank assault, bombing run here, and then maybe you score 3 hits on the Star Destroyer. Well, if I don't roll any heals, you've done 5 damage to wipe out all of these units here, which is pretty tough. And if you're lucky enough to have point blank assault and it's a trap in your hand, you can play them both. Make sure they don't play imposing presence to block hits, and make sure they're whittled down on damage. And then even if they hit all 3 hits back, you just lose 3 Y wings in that exchange. That'd be a great, great trade. All right, so combat. This is a combat trick with undercover, even though it reads like a block, it's actually a combat trick. So 1 in a million is kind of a combat trick. So rebels are very cagey fighters. You need to think about using their action cards to help you win battles so that you can score objectives. All right, next up on the list, let's go with Cassian and Saw. Why are these heroes good? Well, it's actually because they have icons. So Saw is able to run 3 strength missions, even though he's not great at doing it because 2 of them are minor. And Cassian has 4 intel icons, which means he can also run covert operations. Because Cassian has logistics, he can also run behind enemy lines, which is nice. And his card Secret Mission is like a poor man's version of Desperate Hour. Pretty good. His lesser card, K2SO, is nice because it adds a strength icon and an intel icon to any hero. So generally, you will want to add this to either Maydeen, which will make him a 3 strength, 3 intel leader, right? Look kind of like Luke, except he can run all the 3 strength missions. Or you'll want to add it to Leia, which will make her a 3 intel leader and a 2 strength leader, and a 2 strength leader can run things like hit and run, which is great. So K2SO not bad depending on what your leader count looks like with icons. Under the radar is interesting because it's basically a free rapid mobilization, right? So you look at 4 cards and you can determine if those are good probes or if they're bad probes, and you can put them on the top or the bottom of the deck in any order, right? And then you save one for later. So let's say we save Ilum here, right? That means, and we look at the rest of these and we say, okay, the Empire is already on Naboo, they're already on Corellia, and they're probably going to check out Dathomir, so we'll just put these in the top of the deck so that we know the next probe draw that the Empire does is not very good. And then when they get close to our base, we can do a rapid mobilization. We can put Ilum on the top. And then when we draw our rapid cards, we know that Ilum is going to be one of those options. So we can plan around it by sabotaging Ord and liberating Mygeeto with an Incite Rebellion sort of thing. Um, so yeah, Saw is nice because he can run Demolition, can also run Wookiee Uprising, cards like that. But whereas typically only Chewbacca can do that, or Maydeen if he has K2SO. Otherwise, you're having to put 2 leaders on the 3 strength missions to run them. So Demolition is a nice one for Saw. All right, next up we have, let's see, is it Jyn or is it Chewie? I think we're going to go with Jyn and Chirrut. Okay, let's talk about their less useful card, which sometimes is still useful, Trust in the Force. Place this leader in a subjugated system, destroy a ground unit, flip a loyalty, right? So what's that typically used for? Well, if you have a Imperial that has a subjugated Corellia, with a single trooper in there, and it's a build turn. You kill the troop, you make it loyal, and then you flip it. And now all of a sudden you're building a Mon Cal here. So maybe as an Imperial, maybe last turn I moved my fleet up to Celeste. Well, now I actually have to go back and re-subjugate it, which wastes a turn for not just that leader, but then a second leader to get him to move back again at a later point. That's obviously a card that can help score loyalty objectives as well. So don't underestimate the Force. Trust in the Force. Ha, see what I did there. Chirrut, you know what? He's got 3 diplomacy. I'm not really sure why, but he does. What does that mean? He is the only other rebel leader besides Mothma that can run public uprising without assistance. He can also run regional aid. He can also run trade negotiations. So, I mean, good for Chirrut. He's also very good at running Incite Rebellion because, unlike Mothma or Leia, he has 2 ground icons, and he has a nice card, destroy 2 health worth of units in a system. Okay, so let's say the Empire left an ATST and a troop on a system, and you want to score a crippling blow. Or maybe they left 4 troops in an ATST, or 3 troops in an ATST on an area, right? You can incite rebellion, start with Base's loyalty to kill the ATST. That counts as 2 units killed as long as there's still a combat. Then you start the combat. You have 3 troops, maybe the Empire has 2. You use your 501st card to delete another stormtrooper, and now it's 3-on-1. You kill that last stormtrooper, maybe one of your guys dies. You've freed a system. You've probably scored liberation or crippling blow. You've been a huge pain in the butt to the Empire. It's a he's very good. I almost always take Chirrut. I love Baze's loyalty more than Trust in the Force, just for scoring combat objectives, but not bad. And then Jyn. I don't love Jyn. I think she's generally one of the worst rebel heroes, except for she does have 3 intel, right? Now, she's not as good as running covert operations as Obi-Wan is. Um, and also, her heist card is nice. It's nice for grabbing Death Star plans or another objective or a raid outpost, but there's lots of other heroes that can run heist as well, like Obi-Wan, for example. 1-2, she's not particularly strong. She does have a minor diplomacy, so you can, sneak out a build alliance or something along that lines, but she's generally my least favorite hero. And then I do not really like her card either. Okay, after you win a combat, this is a common mistake. After you win a combat, choose an objective in your discard pile and put it on top of your deck. That does not mean take an objective and put it in your hand. That means put it on the top of your deck. So if you have already scored, if you have already scored threat in the core and you want to score it again that turn, you don't put it in your hand to then immediately score it again. You put it on top of the deck, draw it, and then score it next turn. Now, that in itself isn't bad, but it does prevent you from taking a better objective generally that's lower on in the objective deck. So for example, if I know I can score threat in the core easily, well, sure, I can put it on top, but now that's coming at the expense of getting Raid Imperial Factory, which might even be easier to score than threat in the core, especially because the Imperial player sees which card you take out of your discard pile to put on top of the deck, so they can prepare for it the next turn. In some instances, if you're planning on scoring Liberation twice in a turn, you can score Liberation, play something to fight for, put it on top of your deck, do some sort of covert operation or a heist to draw that objective again, and then score it again that same turn with another fight. But that's a little too complicated for, I think, what that card is for. And then last but not least, Chewbacca, and extra last but not least is Han Solo, in my opinion. Han doesn't have enough icons to do too much here. He's just like a worse version of Chewbacca. You don't generally need a single diplomacy. I mean, he can run infiltrate okay because he protects himself because of the fists, but Chewbacca's just generally better. He can run Wookiee Uprising, plant explosives, demolition. He can run wedges, Rogue Squadron raid if he needs to. And if Chewbacca's in the pool and he does not have the Millennium Falcon on, then the Empire knows that Wookiee Guardian is in play, which means basically any sort of fist mission that you want to play as the Empire is going to be tough to pull off because Chewie can just not only block it with 3, but he can just outright cancel it. So that means detain or um, planetary assault or capture or carbonite. It's nice to have Wookiee Guardian. I almost always take that card if it's available. Old Friend, place Han in either Kashyyyk or Bespin and take Chewie or Lando. Okay, not terrible, but you know, I don't like it because then if you get Wookiee Guardian or Independent Operation later, maybe you don't take that card because you have a different hero to get instead. I don't know. This is one of I don't know if I like this card less than Jin's card, but it's close. And then the Millennium Falcon as well. It can be nice because if you don't draw any rescues, you can take the Falcon, put it on Chewbacca, rescue the leader by running um, running a demolition or running a sabotage on there. Um, you know, they're okay. All right, now that we've covered all these cards and hopefully given you some insight on extra things to think about with leaders, let's rank these suckers. A, B, C, D, E, F, and double F. All right, in A, no surprise, 1 in a million. Best card in the game, I think. Better than Ozzel's card, maybe? Maybe not. I do like Ozzel's card. Second off, I got Independent Operation and Wookiee Guardian. Chewie with 3 strength, and Lando with, again, what I think is a game-breaking card. I'd always recommend taking that. C tier, which makes it sound worse than it is. C tier is still great, obviously, because there's only a couple cards better. I'll put Baze's Loyalty. Very good for scoring objectives and causing headaches in the Empire. It's a trap, very good for killing Imperial units. Ambush, very good for killing Imperial units, including shield bunkers. Um, yeah, I love it. Next up, we got Undercover. Don't forget about its double attack, sort of secret use on there. Apparently, I thought Old Friend maybe is not as bad as it could have been. I think I probably put Target the Star Destroyers or something in here instead. Under the radar, mm, maybe rethinking things here. And then K2SO, um, the reason it's good is because it can make up for shortcomings in your leader pool. If you have Cassian, you don't necessarily need the extra minor intel, but if you're missing Chewbacca, having K2SO on Madine or Leia is very nice to have. Target the Star Destroyers I have after that with Wedge, Trust in the Force, Point Blank Assault, and then Son of Skywalker. Obviously, these are all the thing about this tier, this D and E tier. It's very dependent on what the rest of your board looks like, I think. After that, I have Noble Sacrifice and Millennium Falcon, kind of situational cards. Like you need the Falcon if you don't have any rescues, but you probably have a rescue by the time you need it. Noble Sacrifice, I don't get this card played against me very often because I don't typically capture Obi-Wan. And then Something to Fight For in the end. All right, thanks for watching this video. Do me a favor and leave some notes in the comments. Let me know what you disagree with. My guess is most of it'll be here. Feel free to rank all your cards if you like. I'd love to see them, or at least let me know what your 1A and 2 level B cards are. Maybe you like the Millennium Falcon quite a bit more than I do, or maybe I'm not seeing the true value in Trust in the Force, but let me know. And also maybe let me know what your favorite leader pair is. Again, mine is Luke. Like if I could only guarantee I get one pair of leaders all game to be able to draw on. Like if I knew one of these sets was going to come up every game, I would pick Luke, I think. But maybe you guys would pick something else. Let me know. All right, guys, I appreciate you watching. I will see you around.